if you ever have trouble sleeping, put this by your bed. It's the last chapter is the best one. You'll never have to take pills again, all right? Okay. Quill is finally now, after 20 years, we're seeing some really good materials coming in onto the market which can really make our job better. Now, the reason that this person is safe is because the scaffolding was there, right? It's absolutely typical Vygotsky that if you don't have the suitable scaffolding and you try to put children into a situation where the language is different, they will sink or swim. And in this, oops, sorry, it's finished, it's okay, it's good, it's waterproof. And in this case, they sank. So across the world, what we've got is a remarkable number of schools which are teaching in English, but they are not changing the methods from what they were using.
It's very unimportant. The criticism and the negativity towards teaching through another language for a certain percent of the time in a Spanish school is way, way, way smaller than the anecdotal and the scientific reporting that is coming through. So basically what we wanted to say at the beginning here was that the situation with CLIL is looking very healthy.
That's really important because sometimes we find people that are totally reluctant to follow the CLIL approach because they say, no, it's just 100% English. They come from the world, from the paradigm of ESL, which is good. I mean, it's fine. You can do immersion programs if the conditions are ideal, but if they are not ideal, you cannot do that. And this criticism is normally based on stereotypes and wrong assumptions. And what I said is totally right. Is one thing is orientation, and another thing is research. And research has proved and demonstrated that it works. It could be 50%, 75%, it doesn't have to be 100%. By making collaboration with teachers, making them work together, parallel, transferring from languages, and this works. And research has proved that, not intuition.
This exercise, okay, I tricked you, you know that, but this exercise was a really good example of an absolutely unscaffolded teaching process. And when I work, most of my work at the moment is in Latin America, and it's also in the Middle East. I design and set up dual language schools, so I visit schools a lot, and trust me, I've seen a lot of really bad teaching. And then I go into some of the schools around here or in Spain where I see somebody who's really had to struggle to introduce a way of accelerating the English. The methodologies are absolutely fantastic. And the message tonight is that the methodologies of CLIL seem to be particularly suitable for this internet generation that we have in our schools, and actually probably we have in this room. And that is a question that would be very nice if you could answer to the person next to you, preferably the one with the beard, and that is this: how many hours a week does a 15 or 16-year-old in your town, your village, spend using digital devices? Using screen devices. Please turn to the person next to you when they get surprised. Give a number shot from 8% to 40%. And the children using those devices, look at the age range, 0 to 8, has shot from 36% to 72%. That's keen. And the reason that this has happened is because the cost of these devices has come down so much, so they have been more widely distributed. But the very young children now, who will be in your classrooms very soon, how many of you are primary school teachers? That's why they look so young. Okay. Those children will be in our schools very young. And I want to ask you now a second question, which is this. Second question, which is this. So this is the last question. This is the last bit of interactivity. I promise. Almost. Have you noticed any change in the children that you work with over the last 5 years? Have you noticed any change, or have you had any thoughts that something may be happening? Can you, again, in the groups, just share any of us have met before, the research from the educational neurosciences on the impact of learning through CLIL type education is very, very impressive. If you want to learn more, you look for CREAM, as in cream and butter, the CREAM report from the European Commission, or you put in to Google mind, brain and education, and you will find a collaborative group between Cambridge University, Harvard and the OECD. So there's a lot out there which is showing that actually doing CLIL is a very fine form of learning languages and learning concepts. But that's not what we're talking about here tonight. We're talking actually about these youngsters. And we have these kind of results. The restlessness, they prefer to work collaboratively. Their sense of knowledge is no longer just intellectual, but it's also a blend of intellectual and competence-based. They have multiple identities. How many identities did you have when you were at school? I think I probably had 2 or 3, not 10. They have diverse thinking skills. They feel empowered. They have a complex sense of privacy, and their mental and physical well-being is slightly different. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring to you, we're going to bring to you some of these findings. Now the first one relates to sleep and nutrition. And what we're finding is this: the research is showing that if you use the digital devices just before you go to sleep, it disturbs your sleep pattern by what? 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 45 minutes? Please pick an answer. In my former job, because I was living in Dubai last year, I was asked to approve the giving of an iPad to every student in an area. And I said no. I said it'd be better to give one iPad to every 2 students if you want them to use it for learning. But basically, do we actually need to be using iPads in the classroom at all? Or is the classroom such a precious time for human interaction that it should be like that? It is. But the fact here on the sleep and nutrition is that the kids appear to be more tired than they were before, and that may be because they are lying in bed sending those last-minute chat messages or whatever, and it appears to be having a very bad effect. There are reports, especially from Spain, of more problems with adolescents, boys and girls in secondary school at the moment, behavioral problems. Is that right? Yeah? Okay, well that may well be linked to this one. But that's got nothing to do with CLIL and nothing to do with languages. The next one does have a lot to do with CLIL, and it's to do with something called the executive function. The executive function is basically like the thing in the brain that helps to organize which we use to help organize things. And what this shows is that just-in-time teaching is highly rated because of the impact of gaming. So I cannot learn it for tomorrow. I need to learn it now, and I need to learn how to learn it now. And that is very, very close to good CLIL practice. Very, very close. So the impact of using the technologies means that these youngsters want to learn in a highly interactive and highly hands-on way, and that is very, very close to CLIL. The multiple identities means that there are problems with this. For example, have you noticed that youngsters are beginning to treat teachers like providers? Like they're sort of acting like consumers, I'm a consumer and you're supposed to give me what I want. Have you noticed this consumer identity coming in at all? It's very common in the countries which are being studied at the moment, especially with adolescents and young adults. Actually, they think it's your duty to serve them. So the concept of the role, the relationship between the teacher and the student is changing. once every 2 weeks, and it was at the end of an essay saying, could do better next time in red ink. But these youngsters live in a world where they are navigating constantly feedback. Now, if you put them into a small group and you ask them to handle a task as a group, this is much more than group work, because they are actually giving feedback to each other constantly, and it's feedback that they can understand and they can respect. So collaborative group work, you know, every student is a scientist, learning by doing, is particularly suitable for young people who have had this experience. And what's really interesting about the testing is that in countries like Finland, we have no standardized tests until the age of 19. All right. And the reason for that, well, there are many reasons for that, and personally I think it's an incredibly successful idea to get rid of the big standardized tests. But the teachers and the students are testing themselves all the time, using formative testing and so on. So I think this is particularly suitable for CLIL as well. Then you have something called space learning. I don't know what this is in Spanish, but many of you do this all the time, particularly those of you in primary level. And what it means is that you keep coming back to what you've already learned from a very different perspective. We know that after quite a limited number of hours of experiencing learning through English, through CLIL, that actually these youngsters develop an ability to problem solve in slightly different ways. It may be 300 hours, but it depends on the age group. But the impact of CLIL is very, very fast. It's much faster than we would have ever realized before. And this spaced learning means that it's very hard for them to read a book. I don't know if any of you have children, do you? You know, those little things with little feet. Yeah? But it can be very hard at the moment, especially for boys, to read books, which, you know, can be a major worry. But one of the problems is that if the book is chunked, if the paragraphing is really chunked and clear, it is much, much easier for them to handle. And that's why the good teaching materials, especially for CLIL, needs to be very much bite-sized, and that's why it is very hard for these youngsters to listen to adults to speak for a very, very long time. And then exercise and well-being, well, I just asked you to stand up because I thought it was time for you. You've been sitting down all day. Sitting is a terrible thing, isn't it? Yeah? Okay, let's just try one more exercise.
You start using this, okay, but you have to follow. It has to flow. It has to flow like the Orinoco. So you start again. Good. Okay. Beautiful. And then come back. The way it has to come back. And then when you get back here, you put your hands like this, and you pull them back really hard, and you say, you say, Shakira. Okay, so let's try it. Okay. Shut up. You can't have Shakira again. Okay, just start good. Good.
You should talk to primary level teachers to find out why they do these silly things, okay? If you look at Generation C, especially if you look at the adolescents, you will find that not only are they like 45 hours or 50 hours using the devices, but you'll also find that they are often sitting when they're using the devices. So when they come to school, they may actually be physically in a worse shape than they were 10 years ago. So the whole idea of play-based learning, and by the way, it's the reason, one major reason why Finland is so successful in the big international benchmark studies like PISA, KIMS, and so on, is the importance of play-based learning at primary level. Children go to school late and they have a lot of learning by playing. Learning by playing, ladies and gentlemen, is very close to learning by doing in a CLIL environment, because it really is maximizing the amount of time that the child controls the learning and the amount of time that these two children actually help each other understand in a way that I could never do it as a teacher. So the whole issue of those classic teachers of CLIL are alive and well. When does adolescence end? What age? Don't tell me, you're going to say, do you mean men or women? When does adolescence change? End? 16, 18, yeah? When you look at the research from the neurosciences, it's more like 25 years old now. The surges and the crazes go on until about 20, 25 years old. That means that actually when we look at the age range, let's say 12 to 17, they are not only being extremely affected by their life in the digital highways and superhighways of the world, but they are getting very, very frustrated with boring conventional teaching methods. And even you here, I mean, you must be la crème de la crème. Isn't that what you said, Kira? These are the best teachers in Portugal? Where is she? She's gone.
La crème de la crème.
But the fact of the matter is that when you are introducing something like CLIL, you really do seem to be using methodologies which suit these youngsters very, very well and turn around their educational systems quite quickly, as opposed to countries which appear to be in decline. This is a 50-year span study which includes CETA and all the rest of them. And it's a very interesting study. Then you'll find countries like Italy and Norway just sliding down absolutely poorly. And then you'll find countries like Finland, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of countries like Canada, which are going up and up. But when you look at those countries, yes, there are some subtle differences. But Australia, New Zealand, are these countries which are doing so well so quickly, are using heavily socio-constructivist methodology, where they're handing the learning as much as they can over to the young people to boost their interactivity. When you do CLIL, you are doing more than improving their English language learning. You appear to be using a teaching approach which is particularly suitable during a time of tremendous change with these young people. And so on that, what we're going to say is, thank you for being an inspiring audience. I hope this has been of interest to you, and it's been a real pleasure to see you. Faces old and new. The old ones don't look any older, which is quite staggering, but there you go. And good luck on your journey. Thank you very much. And then flatten it. Could you clear off the top right-hand corner and put the paper in your pocket so it doesn't stop your fingers. And then the final bit is to pull it towards you like that and tuck it down. Almost final. And then rip off this right-hand corner here. Do not turn the paper at all. Okay. Go into that classroom, careful, and can successfully learn these topics with the language that they have. So the scaffolding is the essence of good CLIL. And the big publishing companies, we've got here some people from Cambridge. This morning we've been working with some people from Oxford. We haven't quite worked out which ones we like most, but anyway, we'll sort it out later. Finally now, after 20 years, we've seen some really good materials coming in onto the market, which can really make our job better. Now, the reason that this person is safe is because the scaffolding was there, all right? It's absolutely typical we got here. But if you don't have the suitable scaffolding and you try to put children into a situation where the language is different, they will sink or swim. And with this, oops, sorry. It's finished, it's okay. Good, it's waterproof. So across the world, what we've got is a remarkable number of schools which are teaching in English, but they are not changing the methods from what they would use had they actually been teaching in the first language. For